Morning, everyone. Good morning to our staff in the Occupational Safety and Health Center. We welcome you as the Executive Director. I welcome you all to our second webinar that will lead to our yearly OSH Congress that will happen on November this year. I hope the information, the very important information that you will be getting from this webinar will help you create a safer and a healthful working environment for all. As you all know, PPEs are an important control measure so that we can protect our workers. So today po, we will be expecting a lot from our resource speaker who will give us more insights about the standards that we provide for our PPE testing. So sa inyo pong lahat, thank you for coming and hope that it will be a very productive morning for all of us. Good morning and thank you very much.
Thank you, EDBNAP. Let's have a quick rundown of our program for today. After the opening remarks, Ms. Diana Joy Romero, Information Tea of OSHC, will discuss the virtual house rules. Then we will proceed with the discussion of the PPE testing standards by Engineer Ramon Fernando, followed by an open forum or Q&A session. Then closing remarks will be given by Engineer Concepcion T. Santo Tomas. The theme for the 17th NOSH Congress will be Building Resilient OSH System at the Enterprise Level, Best OSH Practices in Surviving and Thriving, which will be held on November 2021. To discuss the House Rule, may I call on Ms. DJ?
Yes, thank you, Cha. Ayan, abangan po natin ang mga iba pang detalye para sa ating nalalapit na 17th NOSH Congress. Ang ating pong reminders para sa araw na ito, please turn off your microphone para marinig po natin ng mabuti ang ating speaker. And for those of you who are with us via Zoom, please change your names to reflect the following. Name of the agency and organization before your name po. Clarifications and questions will be entertained during the open forum. So please send your questions via Zoom, chat box, or through the Facebook comments if you are watching us via Facebook Live. So please don't forget to type in your name and the name of the agency or organization you represent. I hope that all of us will have fun and let's all keep an open mind. After our open forum, we will have the evaluation form. So for those of you who want to have their certificates, please do not forget to accomplish the evaluation form for today only po. So we will accept your evaluation forms until 5 this afternoon. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Ma'am DJ. To proceed with the discussion, may I call on Engineer Ramon Fernando. Let us welcome Engineer Fernando po, Engineer 3 of Occupational Safety and Health, to discuss the PPE testing standards.
Good morning po sa lahat. I'm Engineer Ramon Fernando from the Safety Control Division of the Occupational Safety and Health Center. So let me just share my screen. Okay, can everybody hear me? So let's start with our webinar. My topic will be on updates on personal protective equipment testing standards. So for the objective, it is to update the participants on the current personal protective equipment testing standards in use by OSHC as reference standards to qualify approved types of workers for worker safety. So maybe you are familiar with the prevailing laws that only approved types of PPE should be given to our workers for their safety in the work environment. But before we go to the to our topic, let us first examine what are the laws and regulations on workplace safety in relation to personal protective equipment. Well, as a reminder, the DOLE is the lead agency of the government in charge of the administration and enforcement of laws, policies, and programs on occupational safety and health. Now, the legal basis will be Presidential Decree number 442 or the Labor Code of the Philippines. So pagdating po sa safety and health ng ating workers, including the use of personal protective equipment, si our office, the DOLE, is in charge for the administration and enforcement of laws. Actually, there are 4 agencies in the DOLEs that are comprising the OSH system in the Philippines. For the updating of occupational safety and health related policies, we have the Bureau of Working Conditions. Now, when it comes to the OSH enforcement, ito po yung mga bumibisita, yung ating mga labor inspectors. Ito po ay nasa DOL regional offices natin. Now, for any worker who will suffer work-related injuries and illnesses, for their compensation, nandiyan naman po ang Employees Commission, Compensation Commission. So ito po yung agency na pwedeng magbigay ng compensation or rehabilitation work. Now, for the prevention of injuries and illnesses in our work environment, through OSH education, trainings, research, and technical services, dyan po pumapasok yung aming opisina, the Occupational Safety and Health Center. Pero just to give you a background, ang Occupational Safety and Health Center was established through Executive Order number 307 by then President Corazon C. Aquino on November of 1987. And under Section 2, the center shall have one of its powers and functions. Ito ay isa lang, act as the duly recognized agency to undertake practical testing for safe use and set standard specifications of personal protective equipment and other safety devices. So meaning to say, pagdating po sa personal protective equipment, our office, the Occupational Safety and Health Center, an attached agency of the DOLE, will be in charge when it comes to setting the standards for the use ng ating mga workers dun sa PPE na gagamitin nila. Of course, the common reference nung ating mga agencies sa DOLE when it comes to occupational safety and health will be our OSH standards, which is actually under amendment as of the moment. But by the definition given by the Department Order number 198, it refers to a set of rules issued by DOLE which mandates the adoption and use of appropriate practices, means, methods, operations or processes, and working conditions reasonably necessary to ensure safe and healthful employment. Okay? So, dito po sa OSH standards under Rule 1080, doon po natin makikita ang requirements when it comes to personal protective equipment. Now, just recently, on August of 2018, to strengthen compliance with occupational safety and health standards and providing penalties for violations thereof, it was signed into law, yung Republic Act 11058. And for the declaration of policy, the state affirms labor as a primary social, economic force that a safe and healthy workforce is an integral aspect of nation building. So kung makikita po natin dito, ini-strengthen ng Republic Act 11058 yung compliance to 11058. And there will be penalties including in the sabihin natin of the use of substandard PPEs pagka nahuli po tayo doon sa hindi tamang paggamit ng mga PPE sa ating mga workplaces. Now, the implementing rules for Republic Act 11058 is the Department Order number 198, which was signed on on December of 2018. Now, under Section 8, Chapter 3 of the Department Order Number 198, doon po natin makikita no, yung workers' right to personal protective equipment. So, there are 5 items. So, siguro po, mas maganda, isa-isahin natin. Ano? So, for the item 1, every employer, contractor, subcontractor, if any, shall provide her workers free of charge PPE for any part of the body that may be exposed to hazards, capable of causing injury or impairment in the function of any part of the body through absorption, inhalation, or physical contact. So it's very clear, no, from this item that the employer no should provide free of charge ito po mga PPE na kakailanganin ng bawat worker para siya ay maging safe dun sa kanyang ginagawang trabaho. And there is a PPE for every part of the body that may be exposed to hazards. Now for item 2, nakalagay po dyan, all PPE shall be of appropriate type as tested and approved by the DOLE based on its standard and other means of verification. So dito po makikita natin na in-strengthen yung ating requirement doon sa appropriate type. So when it comes, sabihin na natin, sa hard hat, maaring nag-provide tayo ng hard hat, but is it the appropriate type for the hazards na may expose yung mga workers? Later on, we will examine kung ano yung mga appropriate types. And another thing, dapat po as tested and approved by the DOLE. So ito po yung ating tinitignan dito, no? If for some reason or another, wala po tayong testing do sa types ng PPE, ang sinabi ng batas, other means of verification. But again, if the DOLE or OSHC is capable of testing, then the approved type yung pong na-test dito sa OSHC DOLE. Okay? So yan po yung nandyan sa item 2. Now, for item 3, sino ba ang responsible for the evaluation of the appropriate type? Nakalagay po dito, the usage of PPE in all establishments, project sites, and all other workplaces where work is being undertaken shall be based on the evaluation and recommendation of the safety officer as a result of the workplace hazard assessment. So continuously, the safety officer must conduct workplace hazard assessment. And based on the result of this workplace hazard assessment, he should recommend kung ano yung appropriate na PPE to be used by the workers who are being exposed to different hazards of the work area. So ganyan po natin nakikita ito. Now, all PPE must be of appropriate size, weight, and type to specific workers exposed to hazards. Issuance of PPE shall be supplemented by training. So dito po dapat tignan po natin kung yung worker ay fit sa kanya yung mga PPE ginagamit natin. Baka naman maging additional hazard pa ito kung yan ay hindi talaga akma doon sa kanyang sabihin natin sa physique ng katawan niya. So dapat inaano natin, tinitignan natin kung ano yung tamang pangailangan ng worker para maging safe siya sa paggamit ng PPE and hindi ito maging additional hazard habang ito ay ginagamit niya. Training is a very important factor for the correct use of PPE. That is why dapat continuous ang training ng mga safety officers and even supervisors para do sa mga workers in the use of PPE. Failure to provide appropriate PPE in high-risk activities shall give rise to the worker to refuse unsafe work. So meaning to say, if the PPE provided is not appropriate for the work or for the exposure ng mga workers doon sa high-risk activities, then pwedeng sabihin natin ihinto muna yung trabaho until the appropriate types of PPEs are provided. Okay? So yan po yung mga karapatan ng ating mga workers when it comes to the use of personal protective equipment. Now, going back to our topic, kung ano yung ating main topic for today, Let us first define personal protective equipment. Galing po ito sa, again, from DO 198. Personal protective equipment refers to specialized clothing or equipment designed to protect workers against safety and health hazards that may cause workplace injuries and illnesses. That is protection for the body, eyes, head, face, hands, feet, ears, etc. So for every part of the body that may be exposed to the hazards, meron po tayong mga clothing or devices that we use to serve as a barrier between the worker and the workplace hazards. So by the use of PPE, it's only the last option dun sa hierarchy of controls, but still a very important option. Kasi ang PPE, ang ina-avoid lang nito is the effect of the hazard doon sa worker. Well, the best option pa rin natin when it comes to the hierarchy of protection is actually to remove the hazard, to eliminate the hazard. And if we cannot do that, the next option will be to prevent the exposure of the worker to the hazard. And as a last resort, doon po pumapasok ang personal protective equipment in which we want to reduce the effect of the exposure of the worker to the hazard by wearing these personal barriers or devices para hindi siya maapektuhan ng ating mga hazards. So yan po yung ibig sabihin ng personal protective equipment. So for today, I will be discussing testing standards in relation to these five sabihin natin parts of the body, We have the head protection, the hard hat, the eye and face protective equipment, Nandyan po yung ating goggles, spectacles, and face shield. We have the foot protection, for the foot, electrical rubber gloves, and personal fall arrest system. So simulan na lang po natin siguro sa ulo, pababa tayo. So for head protection, our present standard in use as reference is ANSI ISAIA C89.1 2014 or the American National Standard for Industrial Head Protection. So if we decipher yung title, ANSI means American National Standard Institute, ISAIA is International Safety Equipment Association, C89.1 is the code ng ANSI for the test method and minimum performance requirement for head protection. And 2014 is the version of C89.1, which is actually the latest version for head protection in use or released by ANSI. Okay? So, ano po ba itong C89.1 na to? This standard provides performance and testing requirements for industrial helmets commonly known as hard hats. It establishes the types and classes of protective helmets depending on the type of hazard encountered. It includes a specification for helmets designed to offer protection from lateral impact or top-only impact, giving employers and users the flexibility to specify the helmet that best meets the needs of their specific workplace. So, ganyan po natin nakikita kung ano yung nilalaman nitong ANSI ISAIA C89-2014. So, what is a hard hat? A hard hat is a device worn on the head to provide limited protection against impact from falling materials, flying particles, and electric shock. So, meaning to say, anything that can injure our head, we rely on the hard hat to protect us doon sa mga hazards na yan. Okay. Ano po ba yung mga hazards na talagang pwedeng maging o magkaroon ng effect para sa ating mga ulo? So, nandyan po yung ating impact from falling objects, Kamukha nito, naglalakad lang itong isang worker dito, Bigla na lang may material na pwedeng bumagsak sa kanya dyan. Siyempre, this will result, to an injury, if not death. Bump against rigid stationary objects, penetration by sharp objects, yung matutulis na bagay na pwedeng pumasok sa ating mga ulo. Contact with live electrical conductors and fire hazards. Now, what are the effects? For impact, bump, and penetration, pwede po yan yung perforation or fracture of the skull. If you look closely, no, doon sa ating X-ray nitong tao na to, ay makikita po natin na dito talagang na-injure yung kanyang skull. How about contact with live electrical conductors? It can be electric shock or even death, electrocution. And for fire hazards, it can be burns. So after identifying these hazards and understanding the effects, I'm very sure that we will need a head protection. So let us examine what is a hard hat. First, there is the shell, the hard outermost surface of the helmet, less its harness, accessories, and fittings. Kung titignan po natin, itong colored yellow na ito, yan po yung tinatawag natin na shell. And para ito, itong hawak ko na to, this one is colored white. This is what I use as my protection whenever I go to work areas. At depende. Actually, there's no regulation when it comes to the color, but it is management prerogative kung ano yung kulay. Okay, let me give you an example. I used to work in a power plant, sa Sukat Thermal Power Plant. For 17 years, doon po ako nagtatrabaho. And ang aming management, since malaki yung planta, ang gusto ng management is to easily identify the workers kung sino yung nasa work area. That is why each of the department is given a different hard hat. Kami, nasa office of the manager, puti kami. Yung nasa electrical, red. Sabihin natin, yung nasa mechanical, sila naman yung yellow. General services, green. So it's a management prerogative, pagka tinignan natin yung kulay. Sa shell, material, it can be of three types, usually, three types. It can be an HDPE, o yung tinatawag nating high density polyethylene material, an ABS material, type of plastic yan, at thermal plastic, and also yung mga polypropylene material. Now, this shell comes into contact, ito po yung comes into contact with any falling material pag may bumagsak dito. Okay? Siya yung ating nakikita na unang tatamaan ng any falling material. Now, everything inside the hard hat, ito po, lahat po na nasa loob nito, yan. Yan po ang tinatawag na suspension. The portion of the harness which is designed to act as an energy absorbing mechanism. The complete assembly by means of which the helmet is maintained in positions on the wearer's head. So technically, pagka tama ang adjustment natin dito sa ating suspension, hindi yan basta-basta matatanggal sa ulo na nagsusuot nitong helmet na ito. Okay. Ito pong nakakross dito, kung titignan po natin yung nakakross na parang nakakross dito, yan. Yung portion na yan. Yan po ang tinatawag na crown strap of the helmet. This one is the crown strap of the helmet. Now, the crown strap of the helmet provides the clearance between the topmost portion of the head of the wearer and the peak of the helmet. Now, that clearance and the suspension system is actually yung factor na nag-absorb ng energy doon sa babagsak na falling material. Okay? So what makes a good helmet? Siyempre, ang magandang helmet is the one that will not transmit the kinetic energy of the falling material to the wearer. So, ganun po natin nakikita, yung sabihin natin yung magandang klase ng head protection. Okay? Now, in front of the helmet, kung titignan po natin, in front of the helmet dito, parang minsan parang cloth siya, parang cloth lang siya dito. Yan, may cloth yan, sabihin natin. Yan naman yung ating sweatband. Now, the purpose of the sweatband is actually, from the word itself, to absorb any perspiration from the forehead of the wearer. Because, siyempre, lalo na kung marumi kamay natin nasa construction, medyo mahirap po talaga na yan ay pumunta sa mata dahil yan ay mahapdi. Okay, that's why yung ating hard hat are provided with sweatband. Now, kung titignan nyo po dito sa likod, ito po yung mga adjustment para dun sa headband. What encircles our head, ano? Dito po, kung ano yung nag-i-encircle dun sa ulo natin. Yan po yung ating sweatband. Sorry. Yan po yung ating sweatband. Ay, yan headband, I mean. So the headband, actually, no, pag may training po tayo sa PPE, the first thing that a safety officer should do is actually to teach the receiver of the hard hat how to adjust the headband. Now, there are three types of adjustment ano, for the headband. Now, this one is ratchet type. Ito yung ratchet type. Kamukha rin dun sa picture. Ratchet type yan. But, there are other types. Ano, kamukha ng mga push rail type at saka itong pin lock type. Yung pin lock type, ito yung dalawang plastic strip in which yung isang strip maraming butas at yung isang strip naman merong 6 na pins. And usually, hahanapin natin by trial and error saan natin isushoot yung pin para mag-fit doon sa ulo natin. Yung push rail type is just to push the two straps just para ma-tighten natin yung ating headband. Now, what is the correct adjustment? The correct adjustment should be pagka na-adjust na natin siya, not too tight, pero with sabihin natin moderate movement of the head, hindi naman siya matatanggal sa ulo natin. So ganun natin dapat tignan yung correct adjustment for the helmet. Okay? Now, ano po ba yung brim naman na tinatawag? Yung pong paligid by definition, titignan natin, integral part of the shell extending outward over the entire circumference. So yung paligid po na yan, kung titignan natin, kadalasan po, yan po yung makikita natin na parang strengthen no? Parang dinoble nila because yan yung nagbibigay ng strength dito sa gilid ng ating hard hat. So, ang brim, dito naman sa harap niya, meron po yan extended portion. Kung titignan natin. Ano po ang purpose nitong extended front brim? Well, the extended front brim redirects a falling material away from the face of the worker. And sometimes, sabi nga nung iba, it serves as a sun visor pa rin. Okay? But again, yan po ay actually, ang talagang purpose niyan is to change the direction, ilayo doon sa mukha ng tao yung falling material. And 90 to 95% of the available hard hats sa market, nasa front brim po tayo. Now, the chin strap, kung meron pong chin strap, yan ay optional part ng hard hat. It is actually optional for type 1 but mandatory for type 2. Okay? So, ganyan po natin nakikita. And the purpose of the chin strap is to make sure that the helmet stays in place kahit na very rigid yung motion nung ating nagsusuot po nito. Now, according to ANSI C89.1 2014, protective helmets are described by impact types and electrical class. All protective helmets shall meet either type 1 or type 2 requirements for impact type, and all helmets shall be further classified as Class G, Class E, or Class C electrical requirements. Okay, let us qualify what is a type 1 and type 2. Ang type 1 po, helmets are intended to reduce the force of impact resulting from a blow only to the top of the head. Kung makita mo natin, kung may bumagsak na material or object doon sa top of the shell, siya po yung dapat na mag-absorb nung impact na yan. Okay? So yan po yung type 1 na tinatawag. Only to the top of the head. In contrast to type 2, in which the helmet is tested doon sa top and also to the side. Tinetesting po yan. But unfortunately, medyo mahirap po talaga maghanap ng type 2 dito sa Pilipinas. 95% sabihin na natin or 98% are only type 1. Why? Kasi nakikita ko rin naman na most of the hazards talaga ay actually sa taas ang nakikita natin. Why we wear a hard hat is because falling materials, siyempre galing yan sa taas. Kaya most of the time, yan po ang nakikita natin na availability doon sa ating market. Now, bakit mandatory ang chin strap para sa type 2? Again, kung titignan po natin sa gilid ang protection nito, so most likely, no? Baka matanggal o kaya bumagsak man yung tao, siyempre sa gilid din ito, siyempre dapat hindi matatanggal yung helmet. Kaya mandatory siya. But even if it is optional for type 1, the workplace hazard assessment of the safety officer, no, must indicate kung importante na yan ay actually meron yung ating mga workers. Well, for construction project sites, I believe that it should be mandatory dahil because of the rigid motion of the workers. Okay? So ganyan po natin nakikita, no? Even if it's optional, there are work activities for type 1 hard hats na kakailanganin pa rin ng ating chin strap. Okay? So ganyan po natin yan dapat i-approach yung ating workplace hazard assessment. Now, for the electrical types, both for type 1 and type 2, it must pass either a class E or class G. Otherwise, it will be classified as a class C. Okay? So ano ba yung class E or electrical resistant helmet? So class E helmets are intended to reduce the danger of contact with higher voltage contactors. Test samples shall pass the proof test voltage of 20,000 volts. So actually 20,000 volts po yan. Tapos nagbe-burn through pa sa 30,000 volts. Now, Class G on the other hand is a general utility hard hat intended to reduce the danger of contact with lower voltage conductors. Test samples shall pass the proof test voltage of 2,200 volts. But take note that this voltage is not an indication of the voltage at which the helmet protects the wearer. So ano po ibig sabihin yan? So proof test voltage lang po yung 20,000 at 2,200 volts. Now, it is not the rated voltage at which kakayanin ng helmet talaga yan. Okay? So, ang importante po dyan ay malaman natin, ang Class E ay mas mataas ang electrical resistance compared to Class G. Now, ano naman yung Class C? Ito po yung mga no electrical protection type of hard hats. Kuminsan po, kung mapapansin nyo, itong portion na to, meron yan mga butas. Kasi yan po yung vents na tinatawag. While it provides additional breathability, or increased breathability, pero napakadaling pumasok ng kuryente dyan. So Class C or conductive hard hat ay hindi po ginagamit where there are electrical hazards. So ganyan po natin nakikita, how to specify a hard hat, based on the impact type and electrical hazards that may be present in the work area. Now, ano yung test na kailangan natin to qualify yung ating mga safety helmet? ANSI C89.1 requires the 4 performance tests that must be met in order to assign a safety helmet type and class. And these are force transmission test, apex penetration test, flammability test, and electrical insulation test. So what is a force transmission test? It is a measure of force transmitted on the test head form via an electronic load cell. A semi-spherical striking phase impactor shall be dropped on top of the shell of the hard hat. So pagka tinignan po natin later on, ibabagsak po natin tong semi-spherical, or half sphere na striking phase impactor doon sa helmet. Protective helmets shall not transmit a force to the test head form that exceeds 4,450 newtons or 4.5 kilonewtons, 4.45 kilonewtons. Additionally, for each of the preconditioned specified helmet, the maximum transmitted force of individual test samples shall be averaged, and the average value shall not exceed 3.78 kilonewton. Okay? So for each, ang ibig sabihin po nito, when tested, to qualify na makapasa siya as a do sa force transmission test, tatlo po yung ginagamit naming sample pag kami nagte-test. Now, each of the sample, hindi dapat mag-exceed yung kanyang transmitted force ng 4.45 kilonewton. At the same time, kahit isa lang po doon ang maglampas, failed na yung lahat ng set na yon. Now, if we average the three specimens at lumampas din siya ng 3.78 kilonewton, kahit isa sa kanila na lumampas ng 4.45 kilonewton, bagsak pa rin po 'yon. So dapat yung tatlong average nung sample hindi magi-exceed ng 3.78 kilonewton. Okay? So ganyan po namin ino-qualify yung ating papasa o hindi papasa sa force transmissions test. So, paano ba yung aming actual testing po dito? So, we use an oven as a preconditioning equipment. Ito pong oven na to, naka-preset po yan dito sa 49 degrees centigrade. 49 degrees centigrade yan. So, all samples must at least be exposed to 49 degrees centigrade for at least 2 hours bago po natin ilagay dun sa test apparatus. Okay? The purpose of that is actually to simulate the working condition in which kung saan gagamitin yung helmet po natin. Okay? So 49 degrees, yan po yung test standard for hot condition. Okay? Now, this is our force transmission equipment, no? So, ito po yung tinatawag nating semi-spherical na impactor. Okay? Now, the weight is about 3.6 kilograms, no? At ibabagsak yan dito sa setup na to, no? Pagka naka-set up na po yung ating helmet dito, diyan natin ibabagsak yung ating impactor. Now, tingnan po natin kung ano nangyayari pagka yan ay binagsak natin. So this is just a short video, no? Para makita po natin paano siya ginagawa yung testing. So automatically, no, the equipment will be raised. If you are interested sa height, it's about 1.5 meters, And after na magkaroon na nabagsak po yan, from the output ng ating load cell, ibibigay po yan doon sa ating recorder, no? And the recorder will transmit it to the computer at makikita po natin yung test result. Okay? So the required velocity is about 5.5 meters per second, and the maximum force transmitted is 2.69. Kung titignan po natin dito, ito po yung maximum force. Ito po yung tinatignan natin at ina-average natin. So no force should exceed 4.45 kilonewton, and for the average of the three, it should not exceed 3.78 kilonewton. So ganyan po natin nakikita how a force transmission test is conducted. Now, the second requirement to qualify for impact type is the apex penetration test. So what is the apex penetration test? It measures the top of the hard hat's capability to resist penetration. Siyempre, baka mamaya kaya nga niya mag-absorb ng force. Pero pagka matulis na bagay naman ang bumagsak, nabibiyak, siyempre hindi naman siya pwede rin na maging head protection. The test shall include a penetrator with a steel tip and an electrically conductive steel head form. Wires shall be attached to the impactor and head form such that if the impactor makes contact with the head form, a low voltage electric circuit is completed. Data recording for penetration is pass or fail based on any indicated electrical contact. So if we examine the test apparatus, actually we are using the same apparatus but with a different impactor. So ito po, iba itong impactor na to. It is lighter, actually lighter siya, pero matulis naman siya compared dun sa semi-spherical. Okay? Now, if you look at this impactor, meron pong wire yan, connecting wire. At the same time, dito po sa ating head form, meron din po yung wire. So, the moment na bumagsak yan at nagkaroon ng electrical contact, magre-register po yan doon sa aming computer. So, tingnan po natin what will happen in the actual testing of a hard hat. Okay? So, this is our test apparatus. So, pag tinignan po natin yan, the impactor will be raised up to the top of the pole. Actually, hanggang dyan yan, about 2.5 meters yan. And then, from that position, it will be drop doon sa head form, doon sa helmet to see if there is electrical contact. Now, after that, ito po yung ating makikitang result. So, makikita natin the impact velocity is about 7 meters per second, which is the requirement. And then, kung nagkaroon siya ng contact, magre-register po dito kung may contact siya at ano yung time na nagkaroon siya ng contact. So ganyan po natin nakikita yung testing na ginagawa pagka apex penetration ang ating tinetest. Okay? How about electrical insulation test? It measures the shock resistance capability of the hard hat. And as was discussed earlier, it can be 20,000 volts for Class E, 2,200 volts for Class G, and actually Class C is not tested for electrical resistance. So this is our equipment naman for testing the electrical resistance capability of the shell. Kung makikita po natin withstand voltage tester. So this withstand voltage tester itataas po natin yung voltage up to 20,000 volts for Class E, sa nababasa nyo ba 20,000 volts? Ako nababasa ko to 20,000 volts. Tapos ito yung ating probe. So the probe is actually connected po yan. Connected dyan by siyempre electrical wiring hanggang doon sa test probe na nasa loob ng hard hat. The hard hat is actually inverted and filled with water up to the static test line. And then the water outside is also up to the test line. And then 20,000 volts for 3 minutes, titignan natin kung ano yung leakage current. Now, for Class E, the leakage current shall not exceed 9 milliamperes for 3 minutes. And for Class G, which is the proof test voltage is 2,200 volts, the leakage current should not exceed 3 milliampere. Again, for Class E, the leakage current should not exceed 9 milliamperes. And for Class G, it should not exceed 3 milliamperes. So ganyan po natin nakikita yung testing for the electrical resistance capability of the shell. And the last test that is required by the standard is the flammability test. Flammability test measures the capability of the shell material to resist flame. So titignan po natin kung yan ay masusunog. So to qualify na siya ay makapasa actually from the Bunsen burner na meron tayo, yan po ay actually i-expose natin siya sa blue flame ng ating Bunsen burner at about 2 mm from the surface ng ating helmet for 5 seconds. And then remove the flame and then examine if there will be a flame after 5 seconds. Kung meron siyang flame after 5 seconds, yan po yung babagsak. Kung wala, pasado na po sa flammability test yung ating hard hat. Okay? So ganyan po natin nakikita yung ating flammability test for the hard hat. Now, for the eye and face protection, lipat naman tayo sa eye and face protection. Our testing standard is ANSI ISAIA C87.1 2015 or the American National Standard Occupational and Educational Personal Eye and Face Protective Devices. So for this standard, usually what we're testing are safety goggles, safety spectacles, and face shields. So what is the purpose of this ANSI C87.1 2015? This standard provides minimum requirements for protectors, including selection, use, maintenance of these protectors as devices to minimize or prevent eye and face injuries. So, tingnan po natin, as always, from the very start, sinasabi natin na PPE, we want to minimize yung effect ng hazard doon sa tao. So let us look at some hazards na pwede ma-encounter ng bawat worker when it comes to the eye. How about impact hazards? Impact hazards include flying objects such as chips, fragments, particles, sand, and dirt. So these hazards typically result from tasks like chipping, grinding, machining, masonry, woodworking, sewing, drilling, etc. So makikita po natin, mahirap pagka may tumusok sa mata mo, nakamukha nito, Yan. Yan yung mga tutusok sa mata natin. Talaga pong medyo delikado. Kaya hanggat maaari, i-avoid natin yung mga impact hazards na yan. How about heat? Heat is another factor that may injure the eyes. And this includes works doon sa ating mga may molten metal or hot spark, sabihin na natin. Kaya importante, meron din tayong mga eye and face protection. How about chemicals? Direct contact with chemicals is another leading cause of eye injuries. A lot of injuries which typically occur in the form of splash, mist, vapors, or fumes, results from inappropriate choice of PPE. So makikita natin, may PPE nga minsan mali, apektado pa rin yung ating mga mata. How about dust? Sabihin na natin, most common sa construction project sites, talaga pong napakarami nung pwedeng maging epekto sa mata dahil doon sa mga maliliit na particles that stay suspended in the air for a long time. Kaya madaling maapektuhan yung ating mga mata. And the last is optical radiation. Usually brought about by welding. Ito yung welder's plus. I myself was once a victim of a welder's plus. Kasi medyo malayo naman ako pero inoobserbahan ko yung nagwe-welding, naapektuhan pa rin ako nung ating welding radiation. Okay? So ganyan po natin nakikita yung mga hazards para sa ating mga mata. Now, let me discuss with you some of the protectors that we test dito sa center. Safety spectacles. These are primary protective devices with side protection and impact-resistant lenses intended to shield the wearer's eyes from flying and striking objects, glare, and injurious radiation hazards. So kung titignan po natin by definition, lahat po ng lens, kamukha nito, itong lens na to, kahit colored siya o itong clear na to, yan po ay impact-resistant lenses. Impact resistance, ibig sabihin, dapat pumasa siya doon sa ating testing. Now, ito pong lenses na ito, itong mga safety spectacles, hanggat maaari, meron siyang side shields. Now, this one, wala siyang side shield, pero wrap around type siya. Kung titignan nyo, wrap around type siya. So, that is acceptable as a side protection for the eyes. Basta nakapit doon sa mata natin o sa ulo natin. Okay? So, ganyan po natin nakikita yung ating mga safety spectacles. How about goggles? For hazards that may easily enter the eye area, kahit hindi siya directly, sabihin natin, perpendicular doon sa mata pag tama, like yung ating mga liquid or ating mga gaseous hazards, nandyan po yung ating mga goggles na gagamitin. Now, goggles are primary protective devices with tight-fitting frame and high and impact-resistant lenses that completely covers the eyes, eye sockets, facial area surrounding the eyes. So there are three types. Yung direct ventilation goggle, ito po yung may mga butas. Kung titignan po natin yung frame nito, itong frame na to, yan po, marami yan butas, makikita natin. All around the frame, marami siyang butas. But ito po ay hindi ginagamit para sa mga liquid splashes or gases. Ang gamit lang po nito ay para doon sa mga mechanical hazards or sa mga impact hazards na maliliit. Okay? So yan po yung gamit ng ating direct ventilation goggles. Now, for liquid splashes as a minimum, pwede tayong gumamit ng indirect ventilation goggles. So this portion po, ano, yan yung mga indirect ventilation na nakikita natin. So yan yung mga pwedeng pagdaanan ng hangin pero hindi directly na nandun sa frame talaga. Meron siyang dadaanan muna. That's why pwede siyang gamitin sa minimum doon sa mga liquid splashes. Whereas, kung talagang gas yung hazard natin, yan yung mga no ventilation goggle para siguradong walang dadaanan na area yung ating mga hazards. Okay? Now, unlike safety spectacles, goggles provide a secure shield around the entire eye area. Goggles can be worn over prescription glasses and contact lenses to provide protection from flying objects and chemical splashes in dusty environments. Okay? So, there are situations like myself. I wear prescription glasses, ano? Ngayon, para magamit ko yung prescription glasses ko at mabigyan akong protection about the workplace hazards, diyan po pumapasok mas magandang gamitin ang goggles. Because completely, no, pwede po nating gamitin siya in front of the uh, prescription glasses natin. At doon sa labas, protected tayo doon sa ating mga exposure doon sa hazards. Now, what is a face shield? A protective device made of impact-resistant shield. So kung makikita nyo po, ano, sa lahat ng ating eye and face protection, lahat sila impact-resistant. Ano? That extend from the eyebrows below the chin and across the width of the employee's head. So kung titignan po natin yung magandang size o tamang size ng face shield, it should extend beyond the chin. At pag tinignan nyo sa gilid, ano, hanggat maaari umaabot siya dito sa may ear area. So ganyan po natin nakikita, no, yung ating tamang size na mga face shield. Now, in case there is an eye hazard as well as a face hazard in the work area, ang dapat po natin tandaan, face shield should not be used in place of safety glasses or goggles. Meaning to say, face shield alone, ano, will not help us protect our eyes. Face shield is a secondary eye protector. Now, if you remember correctly, no, doon sa ating mga definition, spectacles and goggles are primary eye protector. So if there is a definite or identified hazard for the eyes and you want also to protect your the face, dapat po dalawa ang isusuot natin. Just like this person, ano, nasa ating picture, is wearing a face spectacle, and at the same time on the outside he's wearing a face shield. So there, pagka definite po na meron tayong hazard for the eyes, we wear primary eye protector, and for the whole face we use a face shield. Now, National Safety Council is America's leading non-profit safety advocate. No, it focuses on eliminating the leading causes of preventable injuries and deaths. At sabi po nila, as a general rule, face shield should be worn over suitable basic eye protection. So sana po malinaw tayo dyan na if there are identified hazards for the eyes as well as the face, we wear both eye protection, primary eye protector such as safety spectacles and goggles, and also the face shield. Okay? So ganyan po natin nakikita, no, yung ating protection para sa ating mga mukha. Now, ano naman po yung mga performance tests na kailangan natin gawin para sa ating eye and face protective equipment? Now, according to ANSI C87.1, 2015, there are a lot of tests actually required by the standards. But unfortunately, as of the moment, these are the only tests that we can conduct, no, for the eye and face protective devices. We have the high mass impact test, the optical test requirements, ano, such as the refractive power test, astigmatism test, resolving power test, and the prismatic power test. also the ignition test for the lenses, and the corrosion resistance test for the metal components if there is any. Okay? So ganyan po natin nakikita, no, yung mga tests na napiperform namin actually at the center. But again, hindi po ito lahat ng kabuuan ng test na nire-require ng ANSI 87.1, but these are, we believe, yung mga importante na kailangan ipasa ng ating mga eye and face protective equipment. So high mass impact test. This test is intended to determine the capability of a protector to resist impact from relatively heavy pointed objects traveling at low velocity. Okay? So, pagka merong material directly pwede mag-impact sa mata natin, dapat po meron tayong protection, which is yung ating spectacles na nakapasa sa high mass impact test. Now, a complete device shall fail after the test, if any of the following occurs. Any part, fragment, or material visible to the unaided eye becomes detached from the inner surface of any complete device as determined by the inspection of the device. So, any part device, pagka nakita po natin na may nawalang part o natanggal after impact, no? At after na matanggal siya, will expose the person to the hazard, yan po ay magko-constitute ng failure, no? How about fracture? No? Pagka nakita po natin after impact na nagkaroon ng fracture, ay bagsak din po yan. Penetration of the inner surface by the projectile, passing completely through the lens frame or housing component or by rupture of the inner lens surface. And then the lens not retained. In case na yan po ay may frame, pagka natanggal siya doon sa frame, bagsak pa rin po yan. Okay? So this is our high mass high mass impact test apparatus. So makikita po natin may guide tube ito, no? Itong guide tube po natin dito. And then meron po tayong test head form kung saan nalalagay natin yung ating test specimen o yung sample specimen. And then this is the projectile na ibabagsak po natin dito sa guide tube. Okay? So relatively dapat doon sa may eye area tatama yan yung ating impactor. Now, based on the 4 criteria that I mentioned, yun po yung magiging qualifying requirement para masabi kung pasado siya o hindi. Okay? So ganyan po natin nakikita yan. Now, in case you're interested, the weight of this projectile is about 500 grams or 1/2 kilo. Okay? Na ibabagsak po dito sa ating test specimen. How about the optical test requirements? No? A lot of times, marami pa rin nagrereklamo dahil minsan daw nakakahilo yung ginagamit nila. Well, ito po as of the moment ang kaya namin gawin para mabawasan yung ating sabihin na natin yung ating problema doon sa optical quality ng ating mga lenses. First is refractive power test. Now, this test is a measure of the ability of the lens to focus light rays. Pag nakapokus siya, ibig sabihin, maganda yung tingin natin through the lens. No? Now, astigmatism test is a measure of the difference of refractive power in one meridian of the lens from that of in another meridian, as expressed in diopters also. No? So, ganyan po natin nakikita yung astigmatism test. Later on, I will discuss paano namin ginagawa yung test. And then, the resolving power test, a measure of the ability of the lens to form separate images of two objects close together. So this time, gusto natin makita kung ano yung ability ng lens na mapaghiwalay yung mga objects that are very close to each other. Kung talagang hiwalay sila, dapat makita natin sila na talagang magkahiwalay. And the prismatic power test, which is a measure of the angular deviation of a light ray after passing along the viewing path through a lens. Okay? So yun, especially for those na mga medyo pabilog, no? Pabilog yung ating mga spectacles. Yan po ay actually merong angular deviation yung light rays. Now, this is the equipment that we use for refractive power. astigmatism, and resolution test. Ito po yung retracting power test apparatus kung tawagin namin. So, kung titignan po natin, this one, no, ito pong portion na to is a telescope, no? So, ito po yung adjusting knob for the telescope. Yan po yung tinitignan namin in order na ma-qualify natin itong nasa harap na lens kung yan ay papasa. Now, ito pong malayo na to, no? Itong nandito, ito po yung target image plane na tinitignan po natin through the lens. Okay? So, pag tinignan po nyo yan, it is actually a combined resolving power lines and sunburst lines. Okay? So, ganyan po natin nakikita, no? Itong ating target image plane na to. Now, the distance, no, the distance between the objective lens and the target image lens is actually 35 feet. Ganyan po kalayo yan. Kaya medyo makikita natin, medyo maano siya, maliit na siya, no? 35 feet yan. Now, if all the sunburst, after adjusting the knob, makikita po natin, that is actually the refractive power of the lens. Ganyan po natin na may measure yan. Now, if only some of the lines will be observed, ibig sabihin, meron siyang difference ng refractive power in one meridian compared to the other regions. No? Kaya po hahanapin natin yung opposite side at then kukompute natin yung astigmatism niya. Okay? Now, for the resolving power, no, it must be a compromise between the resolving or the sunburst, no? Dapat maliwanag siya. At the same time, we will clearly see, no, itong ating mga vertical lines at saka itong mga horizontal lines na ito. Yan po yung dapat natin makita para masabi natin na pasado siya sa resolution test. Okay? So ganyan po natin na ginagawa, no, yung testing para sa mga lenses and even sa face shield. Actually, ang requirement is only the resolution test. Now, ano naman yung prism test? Now, the prism test is actually to determine the angular deviation, of the light rail after passing through the test apparatus. Okay? So, kasi ganun din yung makikita ng tao kung sakali na nagbabago yung liwanag sa kanyang lens. Okay? Now, to pass, dapat hindi lalampas sa 0.5 yung reading niya. So, itong circle po na to, no, kung titignan po natin, 5 divisions siya. Yan yung ating makikita na pagka lumampas dyan sa region na yan, bagsak na po sa prism test yung ating specimen. But there is a different qualifier, for spectacles, goggles, and face shields. Sa mga spectacles, 0.5 po ang ating tinitignan na limitation. For sabihin natin face shield, it's 0.37, and for goggles, it's only 0.25. So ganyan po natin makikita, no, yung requirement para makapasa sa prism. In reality, ganito po yung makikita natin. After placing the specimen dito sa head form na po na to, no? Dito sa head form na to, pag pinasok po natin diyan o nilagay natin diyan specimen, kung nung una ganito po siya, no? Meron lang single dot coming from the light source, laser po 'yan eh. Coming from the laser, single point lang po at the center. Kung walang lens sa harap ng ating head form, pag nilagay mo yung lens sa kanya, makikakaroon niya ng deviation. At yun po yung sinusukat natin. Yung pinakamalayong deviation from the center. At yan po yung magiging prism diopter measurement for the lens. So ganyan po natin mini-measure, tinitignan kung papasa o hindi do sa requirement ng ANSI C87.1. Now, ignition test is to determine the protector's resistance to ignition as worm. Definitely, kung baka sabihin natin, hindi naman sinasadya at na dikit tayo sa isang source of heat, pwede po tayong madisgrasya kung hindi siya papasa sa ignition test. Anyway, so ito yung hot rod, na tinitignan po natin, Now, this hot rod should be maintained at about 650 degrees centigrade. No? 650 degrees, and then ilalapit po natin yung lens dito for 5 seconds, and then remove from the hot rod, and then examine kung merong sunog o merong apoy na natitira. Kung wala, papasa po siya. Of course, there will be marks, pero okay lang po yan as long na hindi nag continue, no? There's no glow or any evidence of fire doon sa ating uh, lens. Ganyan po natin ginagawa yung ignition test for the safety eyewear. And the last part, if ever there is a metal component of the eye protector, ginagawa po natin yung corrosion test. Now, for the corrosion test, we boboil muna tayo ng tubig. Saline solution po yan, saline solution. And then, um, removing from the heat, i-expose po natin yung ating metal components for about 15 minutes. And then, immediately, re-rinse po natin siya sa warm, so tap water, saline solution din. And then, left for 20 or ililive po natin siya for 24 hours without wiping off yung mga adhering na mga water droplets, at titignan po natin kung magagalaw po natin yung mga parts kung saan merong mga metal components. Kasi pag hindi mo siya nagalaw, ibig sabihin magpe-fail din po siya. So that's ganyan po natin tinitignan yung corrosion resistance test of the metal components of the safety hardware. Now, for fall protection, ang ating pong ginagamit is a personal fall arrest system. And our test standard is ANSI ASE C359.1 2007, or the safety requirements for personal fall arrest system, subsystems, and components. Okay, what's the purpose of this C359.1? This standard addresses only personal fall arrest systems incorporating full body harness and establishes the minimum performance requirements. So we want to know kung ano yung minimum performance of the components of this personal fall arrest system. This standard addresses the equipment used in occupations requiring personal protection against falls from heights and applies to manufacturers, distributors, purchasers, and users of such equipment. So what is a fall hazard? A fall hazard is anything in the workplace that could cause unintended loss of balance or bodily support and result in a fall. So kung titignan po natin, any location in the workplace in which a worker can be exposed to a fall is a fall hazard. So lahat po yan na pwedeng mag-drop ang isang tao from a higher elevation to a lower elevation is a fall hazard. Okay? So elevated locations which require increased fall hazard awareness would include scaffolds, ladders, roofs, open sides and edges, excavation edges, floor openings, and formworks. Okay? Ang importante po, pag tayo po ay nagbubuo ng ating fall protection program, dapat i-include natin lahat ng locations kung saan pwede mangyari ang fall. Falls from any locations may occur while climbing, traveling, or working. So meaning to say, we should not focus only on the time that the person is working, but during the time also that he is accessing the elevated workplace or traveling in the elevated work area. So lahat po yan should be addressed in our fall protection program. So what can be done to reduce the falls? Ito po isa requirement sa OSHA. OSHA requires that fall protection be provided at elevations at 4 feet in general industry and 6 feet in the construction industry. So kung titignan po natin, sa OSHA, meron difference doon sa pagdating sa requirement kung kailan ka gagamit ng fall protection. Sa general industry, it's 4 feet, whereas sa construction industry, it is 6 feet. So, in any case, our standard, ito po sarili nating standard, the OSHS, require us to provide fall protection for workers exposed to fall hazards. And this can be guarded guard every floor hole into which a worker can accidentally walk using a railing and tow-board or a floor hole cover. So, sa standard po natin, nire-require na dapat, no, kung may floor opening in which a person can pass through, dapat meron siyang floor cover or a guard railing. Now, guard railing should also be provided at elevated open-sided platform, floor, or runway. So, any edges doon sa elevated work area, dapat po meron tayong guardrail, standard guardrail. At least 1 meter yung ating height, no? At least 1 meter yung height. And meron po siyang, sabihin natin, top rail, mid rail, at meron toe board. Okay? So, ganyan po yung requirement natin for the guardrail. Now, regardless of the height, if a worker can fall onto dangerous machines or equipment, employers must provide guardrails and towers to prevent workers from falling and getting injured. So, depende po, kahit na basta makina ang babagsakan, importante, may fall protection kung delikado na mahulog yung tao dun sa equipment. And as a last option, again, personal protective equipment, use of personal fall arrest systems or a safety net. So this brings us to our topic, which is personal fall arrest system. Okay. So what is the complete component of a personal fall arrest system? Of course, there should be an anchor, an anchor, and there must be a connector, no? That is connected to the anchor and to the full body harness of the worker through the D-ring. Ito po yung D-ring na tinatawag natin. Okay? So ganyan po natin nakikita yung components of a personal fall arrest system. Now, under Rule 1086.02 of our standard, ang anchor po is a secure point of attachment capable of withstanding the anticipated forces applied during a fall. Okay? It shall be located above the worker. Now, as a requirement, as of the moment, the requirement po is about 6,000 pounds. Okay? Na dapat yung capacity ng ating anchor, and it should be tested doon sa anticipated direction kung saan mangyayari yung fall of a worker. Dapat ganun natin tinetest yung ating anchor. What is a connecting lanyard? It is a flexible line of webbing or synthetic rope used to secure a body belt or full body harness to a lifeline or anchor. Okay? So ito pong ating connecting lifeline. Usually, nakakabit ito dun sa full body harness. It can be directly connected to an anchor or a horizontal lifeline or a vertical lifeline. Okay? So ito po yung double lanyard. Kung titignan po natin, double lanyard. Now, this one is the scaffolding hook. Kung tawagin natin to, scaffolding hook, yung dalawang yan. And this is the webbing lanyard, And this is the carabiner, okay? Ito po yung shock absorbing device para ma-limit yung fall arresting force dun sa worker na may suot nito. And the heart of the fall arrest system is the full body harness, of course. It consists of straps passed over the shoulders, across the chest, and around the legs of a worker. In a fall, a full body harness protects you more than a body belt because it distributes the force of impact over a greater area of your body. So, as of the moment, hindi na called a safety belt. So, it's not used as a fall arrest component. Ang ginagamit po natin is a full body harness. Okay, pag sinuot po natin yung ating full body harness, more or less ganito po yung magiging itsura niya. Two straps around dito sa ating legs, nakalagay siya, doon across the chest, at sa likod po natin, nandyan yung D-ring. So, ano po ang purpose niyan? To distribute yung weight nung tao na nagsusuot nito in case there is a fall. So kung titignan po natin, when you fall using a full body harness, lahat po ng strap connected doon sa ating katawan, magdadala ng weight natin. Whereas compared to a body belt na nakapokus lang doon mismo sa portion kung saan natin kinabit yung body belt. Usually, dito sa merong area ng likod natin. But the problem is, with a force, yung weight natin na bumagsak dyan, most likely there is an injury that can happen dito sa likod natin dito or doon sa mga internal organs natin na tatamaan. Kaya nga po, mas safer kung tayo ay gumagamit ng body belt. Kung ano yung effect sa body when you are wearing a full body harness or a safety belt. As you can see, sa full body harness, distributed yung weight ng isang tao na nahulog compared to a body belt na actually nakapokus sa isang portion ng katawan ng tao natin. Kaya delikado. Kaya hindi na po siya ginagamit as a fall arrest system component. Okay? Okay, ito po yung testing na ginagawa namin. What we do is actually na tinatanggal po namin each of the component that we are going to test from the specimen. Okay? So webbing harness, webbing lanyard, or loop lanyard. Ang qualifying po natin dyan, this load-bearing strap material shall develop a braking strength of not less than 22.2 kilonewton. Now for the hook and carabiner, parehas din po siya. The specimen shall be capable of withstanding a tensile test force between its two bearing points of 22.2 kilonewton for 1 minute without breaking or distortion sufficient to release the gate. So, ganyan po natin nakikita yung testing yan. Now, for the D-rings, O-rings, and oval connectors, it is also 22.2 kilonewton. And for the buckles, it's 17.8 kilonewton. Okay? So ito po yung aming universal testing machine, Ito pong nakikita natin equipment na to, ito yung test apparatus namin, for the universal testing machine. And then ito po yung test specimen for the full body harness. Ito po yung full body harness. At ito po naman yung ating lanyards, Lanyards yan. Okay, paano po natin yan gagawin? Isa-isa po yan, ilalagay natin doon sa equipment with the corresponding jigs. Kung ano man yung jigs na kailangan. Kung titignan mo, magkakaiba yung jigs nito, di ba? Because each of the component would require para maging tama yung ating pull. Okay? So, yan po yung testing na ginagawa natin for each of the component. At dapat po, after testing, makikita po natin kung siya ay papasa. So this is the test result that we are getting from the equipment. And based on the test result, kung mapapatid siya o makikita natin na hindi niya kinaya yung 22.2 kilonewton, mag-aano po tayo dyan. Ibabagsak natin pag hindi siya nakayanan. Now, this is the test naman for the ating scaffolding hook. And on the right side, ito naman po yung para sa buckle. Okay? Yan din po yung test result na makikita natin. By the way, pagka tayo po ay nagte-testing ng ating mga equipment, let's say, for the buckle, for the scaffolding hook. Mukha po nito, sa scaffolding hook. Yan. Dapat po yan, pagka tinitignan po natin, dapat 2 consecutive intentional actions. So pagka pinindot ko po ito, basta-basta, hindi yan basta mabubukas. At yan po, dapat pindutin ko muna ito nasa side na to. Yan. Pag pinindot ko siya, tsaka lang siya bubukas. So 2 consecutive intentional actions before na ma-release natin. Yan po yung requirement ng ating standard. Para sa hooks and also for the carabiners. Ganyan po natin siya nakikita. Now, this part, kung makikita nyo po itong part na to, this one is what we call the shock absorber. Now, this shock absorber, actually no minimize the fall arresting forces for the worker na nahulog. Okay? So ganyan po natin nakikita yan. As it expands, natatanggal po niya no yung ating o nami-minimize niya yung effect doon sa tao. So how do we calculate the total fall distance no? Assuming that this is the working or elevated work area ng tao, itong portion na to. So yan yung elevated work area niya. And this is the anchor, no? Anchor point niya. Now, in case na mahulog siya, no? Pag kinumpute po natin yung ating fall distance, pagka ang length of the lanyard, no? Pag sabihin natin is 5 feet. Yan po yung length of the lanyard, no? 5 feet. Yan. And the expanded shock absorber, sabihin natin ay 3 feet. And then the distance, itong distance from the D-ring to the foot of the person is actually 4 feet. And the residual clearance, ito po yung residual clearance natin, buhat doon sa paa ng tao hanggang doon sa pinakamalapit na pwedeng tamaan is 2 feet. I'm sorry, 2 feet. Ito naman ay 4 feet, 3 feet, and 5 feet. Nagulo na. That would sum up to 14 feet. Okay? So, ganyan po natin nakikita, yung ating requirement para doon sa fall distance. Another thing that we need to observe, or we want to avoid is the swing hazard. Ito po yung swing hazard, itong angle na to. Dapat po, kaya nga sinasabi sa atin, the anchor must be above the worker. At least dapat nandito siya. This will prevent yung pendulum effect. Yung pendulum effect na pwedeng yung tao na nakasuot niyan ay pwedeng humampas doon sa ating pinakamalapit na object. Okay? So ganyan po natin nakikita yung mga dapat nating avoid when using fall arrest system. Reminder lang po, after a fall, immediately remove from service all equipment used to arrest the fall. You cannot use the equipment again until it's been inspected and approved by the manufacturer or safety consultants or professional engineer. So meaning to say, baka mayroon naging diferensya after a fall, the complete fall arrest system composed of the full body harness, the lanyards na ginamit, dapat po alisin muna natin sa service hanggat hindi siya na-inspect. If ever, the manufacturer or any professional engineer. Now, the fourth type of testing that we conduct is for electrical rubber gloves. So, hindi po lahat ng klase ng gloves ay natetesting namin at the center at the moment, but we are only testing for electrical rubber gloves. And our standard is PNS ASTM D120-2016, or the standard specification for rubber insulating gloves. So, hazard po natin is actually electrical hazard, siyempre. And that is contact with live electrical conductor. So, ito pong ating standard for electrical rubber gloves is a Philippine National Standard. Philippine National Standard na po ito. Adopted by the BPS or ng ating Bureau of Philippine Standard. The original document is ASTM D120 version of 2014. Now, according to the standard, gloves are used for personal protections. Therefore, when authorizing their use, a margin of safety shall be allowed between the maximum voltage on which they are used and the proof test voltage at which they are tested. Okay, ganito po yan, ibig sabihin, according to ASTM or PNS ASTM D120-2016, electrical rubber gloves are classified under 6 classifications. Okay? Class 00, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, class 4 are proof tested to 40,000 volts. And it has a maximum use voltage of 36,000 volts. Compared to class 0, na proof tested to 5,000 volts and maximum use voltage is only 1,000 volts. Okay? So tandaan po natin hindi yung proof test voltage ang masusunod but the maximum use voltage for the classification and the proof test voltage na ginamit. Okay? So yun po yung ating maximum use voltage na dapat na tignan. Okay? Ang importante po dating tandaan dito, dapat alam muna nung lineman, kung lineman man siya, kung ano yung line voltage na hawakan niya. And the rating of the rubber glove should be higher than the voltage na may expose yung kanyang trabaho o sa trabaho niya. Okay? So ganyan po natin nakikita yung paggamit ng ating electrical rubber gloves. So just like the hard hat, ganito yun po yung ating pag-testing using the withstand voltage tester through the connecting lines. Nandun po yung ating water line, test line niya. And then the conductor. Nandito, and we measure the leakage currents according to the requirement of the PNS ASTM D 120. So ganyan po natin nakikita yung ating standard. Reminder lang din po, in addition to the daily inspection, electrical safety equipment are required to be subjected to periodic electrical tests. By the way, when we do daily inspection, we want to observe the electrical rubber gloves for any punctures, kung sabihin natin baka nung day before, sabihin natin na ginamit siya, nagkaroon siya ng puncture, and to actually qualify kung talagang wala siyang butas, maybe you can do a air pressure test, in which you wrap the safety glove, with air pressure at tignan po natin kung lalambot siya. Yan po yung the easiest way to test daily dun sa ating gloves. Rubber insulating gloves must be tested before first use and every 6 months thereafter. No? For rubber gloves na hindi po nagagamit, meron siyang shelf life na 12 months and then kailangan na po natin siya ipatest ulit. Now, there are situations in which we recommend, hindi 6 months, kundi 3 months lang, Siguro yung mga user, minsan makikita na we recommend only 3 months because kahit nakapasa siya, nakita natin mataas na yung kanyang leakage current. And anytime, baka pwedeng bumigay yon, kaya dapat po mas frequent na yung testing ng ating electrical rubber gloves. Now, for the last part, nung ating discussion, we will discuss foot protection. And under foot protection, we have two standards, PNS ASTM F2412-2016 for the standard test method, and PNS ASTM F2413-2016 for the standard specification for performance requirements for protective toe cap footwear. Okay? So, ano po ba yung mga foot hazards? Falling or rolling objects, Siyempre, pag nabagsakan tayo dyan at hindi safety shoes ang ginagamit natin, most likely magkakaroon tayo ng injury. How about sharp objects? Especially sa construction project site, Baka may mga pako dyan na pwedeng pumasok dun sa ating sapatos. Live electrical conductors, kung sakali makaapak tayo. Hot surfaces, and even wet, slippery surfaces. Now, common foot injury will be punctures, burns, cuts, amputations, and electrocution. Kadalasan po, ito yung pwedeng mangyari, Crush or toe cap, o toe, I mean. Kaya po meron tayo sa safety shoes natin na toe cap na tinetest natin, Now, for the ating standard, the Philippine National Standard, which is F2412-2016, these test methods measure the resistance of footwear to a variety of hazards that can potentially result in an injury. Okay? Whereas yung 2413, ito man po nagbibigay ng minimum requirements for the performance of the footwear. Okay? So ano po yung mga tinetest natin sa mga footwear? We have the impact resistance for the toe area of the footwear requires a minimum clearance of 12.7 mm for men and 11.9 mm for women after a nominal impact of 75 foot-pounds. Compression resistance for the toe area of footwear requires a minimum clearance of 12.7 millimeter for men and 11.9 millimeter for women after compression of 2,500 pounds. Puncture resistance, properties of the midsole, or puncture resistant device, dapat po can withstand 270 pound force. Okay? So ito po yung testing, Initially, pinuputol po namin o kinakat namin sapatos to fit into the test apparatus po natin. And initially, gumagawa po tayo ng ating modeling clay para siya ang maging determinant, kung ano yung naging depression ng sapatos after impact or compression. Okay? So, when we place it in the test machine, we make sure that the naka-align po yung ating tip ng ating impactor doon sa toe cap at saka doon sa modeling clay. So ganyan po yung magiging itsura. At yan na yung itataas natin yung ating impactor to a height that would give 75 foot-pounds. Okay? So ganito po yung ating testing. Titignan po natin. Mabilis lang to. Pagbagsak po niyan, makikita na natin kung ano yung force o yung naging depression ng ating clay after impact. So, ito po yung ginawa kong sample for testing. Initially, I measured itong height nitong ating clay and ito po ay 44 millimeter. Now, after impact na ginawa po natin doon sa nakita natin sa video, this clay ay naging 30 millimeter. Okay? Naging 30 millimeter. So, ganyan po yung makikita natin. Pagka binagsakan, ang ating po requirement ay 12.7. So, 12.7 millimeter. So, definitely, pasado po ito, kasi malayo. Kasi, ganyan po yung kanyang clearance doon sa toe cap. Now, ano naman yung compression? Ang ginagamit po namin dito is a universal testing machine also, for compression. Okay? So, initially, ito po yung atin, ikakat natin sapatos at meron tayong clay na ilalagay dun sa loob. At ganyan po yung kanya magiging itsura. Now, observe what happens when we operate the compression machine. So, as the compression of the toe cap, ginagawa po natin na ibabasa po natin. So, this is the set point. Ito po yung set point natin. So, hanggang dyan, dapat makikita natin, yan po yung 2,500 pounds. At makikita natin kung yan ay yung clay ay makakapasa dun sa limit na ni-require para sa kanya. So, after 2,500 pounds, ihinto na po natin yung testing. And then, we will look at the clay, kung ano yung depression niya. Now, when I conducted this test, initially po, itong clay na to ay 30 millimeter. And after testing, ito pong clay na to, bumaba po siya sa 14 millimeter. Again, this is a male sample, kaya ang ating pinagbabasihan dyan ay 12.7 millimeter. Ganyan po natin ginagawa, yung ating testing. Of course, pasado pa rin yan, kahit 14 millimeter, kasi hindi naman niya bumaba doon sa 12.7 millimeter. Now, for the electrical property of safety shoes, the same equipment, pero siyempre, dry condition to, walang tubig ito. And then, we expose it to 18,000 volts for 1 minute. And then, we observe the leakage current. It should not be more than 1 milliampere for 1 minute. And for static dissipative, ito po, as component ng ating equipment, we have the power source that would give us 50 volts DC. At the same time, this one is the voltmeter, with a resistor across, which is actually 1 mega ohm. And then, we measure, kung ano yung voltage na ilalabas pagkahawak ng tao yung wire na nagkokonekta doon sa ating equipment to the grounded plate, steel plate. Okay? So ganyan po natin nakikita yan. Now the limit sa resistance is between 1 mega ohm to 100 mega ohm. Dapat within that para makapasa siya sa static dissipative test. Okay? So I'm about to end my discussion for the clear points. PPE requirement of workers in workplaces is the responsibility of employers and contractors. Appropriate types of PPE for use shall be based on the hazard assessments of the safety officers. And only the PPE is as tested and approved by the OSHC DOLE, such as safety shoes, hard hats, safety spectacles, safety goggles, impact-resistant face shields, electrical rubber gloves, and components of personal fall arrest system shall be provided to the workers free of charge. And as a summary, assess the workplace for hazards, use engineering and work practice controls to eliminate or reduce hazards before using the PPE. Select appropriate and approved PPEs to protect employees from hazards that cannot be eliminated. Inform employees why the PPE is necessary, how and when it must be worn. Train employees how to use and care for their PPE, including how to recognize deterioration and failure, and require employees to wear selected PPE. Now, if you are wondering kung ano yung nilalabas po namin na o binibigay namin do sa mga nagre-request for testing, ito po yung itsura ng aming final test result. Okay? More or less, for the all types of PPEs, 2 pages po siya, no? At makikita po natin dito, yung mga brand, yung type ng PPE, and this first box, ito pong box na to, itong box na yan. Yan po ay actually yung description, no? Kung ano man yung description tungkol dun sa PPE na tinest namin. And this color, ito naman box po na to, ito yung nagsasabi sa standard na ginamit namin for the testing. And these are the results of the test. Lahat po ito. Ryan, results of the test yan. And the remarks namin or doon sa test na ginawa. Of course, signed by the person who tested and approved by the management of the OSHC. Reminder lang po, validity of test results as based dun sa ISO 4, no? ISO procedure for PPE testing and assessment. The final test result, the issued final test result report for a PPE test request shall have a validity of 2 years from the date indicated in the report. Now, bago po ako magpaalam, I want to direct your attention dito po sa aming website. Kung i-click nyo po yung aming website, makikita nyo po dito, just try to scroll down our website. And then, pag nakita nyo po itong technical services, i-view list nyo po ito. I-click nyo po itong view list. And then, pag nakyok na po natin yung view list, baka hindi sumunod. Naghang pala, sorry.
Sir Mon, isi-share ko na lang po yung website, sir.
Magandang tanghali po sa inyong lahat. First of all, maraming salamat, Engineer Ramon Fernando, for a very informative presentation. Ang topic po natin ngayon is actually very technical topic po ito, but Engineer Mon was able to present it in layman's term, and I think most of the participants fully understood the presentation. As maybe most of the participants are not aware kung paano po ginagawa ng Occupational Safety and Health Center ang testing sa mga personal protective equipment na ginagamit po natin. So although sabi nga po natin, laging sa hierarchy of control, PPE po yung huli, no? It is the last line of defense. Lagi po nating naririnig yan sa lecture. Pero napaka-importante po na yung ating last defense na yan ay pumasa po sa testing at yun po yung hindi lang po dahil sa sinasabi ng batas dahil kung kinakailangan po na yung kung magkaroon po ng insidente, ito pong PPE na to ay dapat mag-provide ng needed protection po sa worker, sa tao na gumagamit nito. Okay, so marami pong hazard na mention na po. Fall hazard, impact, electrical hazards, andyan po lahat ng hazard sa ating workplaces. And the use of personal protective equipment ay kung hindi nga po natin talaga na-eliminate ang workplace hazards ay ang paggamit ng PPE po ay kailangan po natin. So sa mga participants, maraming salamat po. Marami tayong participants dito sa ating live and even sa Facebook. Nasilip ko kanina sa Facebook. Live streaming tayo. So maraming salamat po sa pag-attend po ninyo dito sa ating webinar on the standards, PPE testing standards. Alam po namin na interesado kayo dahil ang PPE po ay hindi lang basta-basta natin binibili. But kailangan po ay naiintindihan natin yung mga kinakailangan parameters, mga requirement na andyan po. At higit sa lahat, nakapasa po yan sa ating testing. Okay, so again, maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat at marami pa po kaming webinar, upcoming webinar. Just keep posted lang po or follow lang po natin yung Facebook ng OSHC at marami pa po tayong webinar with regard to occupational safety and health. Okay? So, again, sa ngalan po niya ang aming Executive Director, si Engineer Noel Binag, salamat po at mag-iingat po tayong lahat. Thank you.